Welcome to the MacAdmins Podcast, presented by VMware. VMware Workspace ONE empowers you with full macOS lifecycle management. Get past the hassles of legacy imaging with faster modern onboarding, easily deliver all your native Mac app packages as well as SaaS and virtual Windows apps, and empower users with one-click single sign-on. Stay on top of your security needs with complete encryption management and rich conditional access. The recognized industry-leading unified endpoint management solution is your one-stop for all Apple devices and apps. Learn more at workspaceone.com. Marcus, we're in the same space.
We are.
And we're here at the wonderful Guthrie Theatre at the University of Technology, Sydney?
UTS.
UTS.
Sydney,
here in lovely Sydney, Australia. And it's been a wonderful first 2 days of the X World Conference so far.
It's been really good. Just a quick note for the audience. Tony did mention at the start of the conference that before anything is uploaded, any recordings, anyone on the recording will get approval. That's actually not the case for this. This will be getting uploaded to the podcast stream straight away. So feel free to heckle. We want people to heckle and join in. So come on, let's make some noise. But you won't unfortunately get approval. But we do encourage heckling. It's a nice change when we do these live recordings to actually not just be sitting in a dark room wondering if there's actually anybody out there. For once, we know there's someone living. So it's great to be here at X World again. It's wonderful to have you here. I know it's a long trip. Which time zone does your body and mind feel that they are in?
Well, I mean, I'm told that we're in what? This is Universal Time Zone plus 10 here in Sydney. Yep. And I think I'm probably somewhere around +4 or +5 when I started in -7. So I feel like I'll be caught up just in time to go home.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful, and you start it all over again.
Exactly, and we just go the other way, and maybe by the middle of July, I'll know what day and time it is again.
Yeah. So we're not the only people here on stage, are
no,
we?
We're not.
There seem to be a few other people here. So we might introduce our guests. So the first guest we have Nindi Gill, and Nindi is why don't you tell us where you come from and what you do, Nindi?
Cool. Hi, everyone. And hi, Tom and Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So my name is Nindi Gill, and I'm the Senior Engineer for the Apple and Linux Endpoints team at the University of Melbourne. Do you want me to go into my origin story?
Why not? Does everybody love the origin stories that we have on the podcast?
Yeah.
So Nindi, start from the beginning. How did you end up managing thousands of Macs at one of Australia's most prestigious universities?
Okay, so please don't hold this against me, but I actually grew up using PCs.
Gasp.
Please don't hold it against me. In terms of, I guess, when I caught the Apple bug, what I remember was studying computer science, and the languages that I was studying were Java, C, C++, and what I remember is watching the WWDC 2008 keynote where Steve Jobs got up on stage and explained that the App Store was coming, and any developer could download Xcode, write an app, build an app, ship an app, and that got me. So went to the Apple website, tried to find where Xcode was, looked for Xcode for Windows, had a bit of trouble finding it, and then realized that I needed a Mac, which I didn't have at the time. What I did have was a Pentium 4 PC. So looked into getting macOS, or macOS 10 back then, running on my Pentium 4, so Hackintosh. That's sort of how I got into using the Mac operating system. So got Xcode working, and then started delving into Objective-C, the macOS frameworks like Cocoa Touch for iOS. Fair to say that's the start of my Apple developer journey. Fast forward a couple of years, so we're looking at 2011, 2012. I started working as a genius at the Apple retail store in Chadstone, which is in Melbourne.
R180 represent.
R180 represent, where I had the privilege of meeting and working alongside one Marcus Ransom. So we hit it off pretty much from the start. We've been friends ever since. Fair to say our friendship's pretty rock solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just say that it is.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
survived that
Yeah.
experience, you're right?
We have good times, we have bad times, but
Yes. And learned quite a few things at the Apple Store, specifically how to repair hardware. So prior to working at Apple, my repair knowledge comprised of, so I used to, like I said before, grew up using PCs. I'd build PCs in my bedroom, with no ES-theory straps. I'd build them on my carpet floor. Learned a thing or two at the Apple Store. Learned how to not zap myself. Also learned quite a bit about the software, so macOS under the hood, how things work. I think 2011, 2012 was about Leopard, Snow Leopard, from memory. So this is pre-system integrity protection, pre-SIP, pre-T2, pre-secure enclave. You could pretty much do whatever you want. I remember being able to reset firmware passwords by popping out the RAM of MacBook Pros. It was a glorious time.
top case repairs for plastic MacBooks.
Yes, crackbooks,
Yeah.
as we used to call them. Other things that I learned in terms of software, how launch daemons work, how launch agents work, p-lists, user templates, all the nuts and bolts that go into the operating system. So I got a really good understanding of how macOS works. Again, fast forward, we're looking at 2013, 2014, moved into education. So I was a sort of a level 1, 2, 3 tech for a primary school, North Melbourne Primary School. I also consulted for primary schools and high schools, so K to 12, where we implemented things like iPad programs. We did Mac deployments. I discovered this new thing called MDM. And we also deployed Wi-Fi. Now, I attended the Wi-Fi workshop, was it yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah.
Yes, that was presented by Tom and Chris. I now cringe at the thought of all the mistakes that I've made.
That's okay. So do I.
Just silly things like access points on the walls instead of silly things. Yeah, just
Yep.
absolute cringe.
Though the point is not to cringe, but to know, like, retroactively, mistakes were made.
Yes. But I don't work there anymore, so that's okay. Moving right along. So for the last 2 years, I've been at the University of Melbourne. And like I said before, we're part of the Apple and Linux endpoint computing team. We're a team of 5. And one of my colleagues, Adrian, is actually in the audience. So we've flown out from Melbourne. Also shout out to Francesco, Simon, and Anthony, who are holding the fort back home. What we do, we manage, give or take, 5,000 staff Macs, that's one-to-one. We also manage 1,200 student Macs, which are student labs, and we also have Macs set up in lecture rooms. Also, 400 or so iPads, which are used by various faculties throughout the university. We also use these iPads to control the lecture AV and lighting, things like that, sort of like a touch panel. We've also recently inherited the Linux fleet at the university, so we manage, give or take, 400 Linux machines, both desktop and laptop, and we're in the process of scaling up in Puppet, which is what we use to manage those machines. That's in summary where I'm up to now, and now I'm at Xworld.
Yeah. So what was it like working alongside Marcus at the Genius Bar?
How long do we have? No. So I will say this. Marcus from day one has been amazing. He's always had my back. He always will have my back.
Yes, but tell us all of the dirt that he's got. Marcus is now taking out his wallet. And
So I was tasked with dishing the dirt on Marcus. The main thing that comes to mind, so to paint the picture, I've got long hair, I've got a lot of face fuzz, I've got hairy arms. For some reason I just don't understand, I would be Marcus's go-to guy for repairing the glass panels on iMacs. So dive a little deeper. So older iMacs, where the LCD and the glass panel were not fused together, you would have to take the glass panel off, take the LCD panel out, swap it or repair it if you need to, and then lint roll the LCD panel and then try to get the glass back on without a speck of dust. No particles can be within that sort of air gap.
Yeah. Put the glass on, stand there, look at it, wipe all the dust off the front, realise there's more dust on the inside than there is on the front, take it off, get the lint roller out again, roll everything, put it back on, wipe the dust off, there's still dust on the inside, maybe say some things, get a bit cross, say things about the people that designed this in this way, try it again, try it about 10 times. Nindi.
So, Marcus, why didn't you just pick the bald guy in the room? Like, why'd you go with the guy that's just got all this fluff and stuff?
Because you could do it better than I. Same thing with getting iPhones into DFU mode. It's like trying to not take a screenshot when you're doing all sorts of things out there on the floor with a customer giving that impeccable service. Oh, look, we're just going to put this into DF. Like, just hold on a second, Nindi. but Nindi wasn't just there for solving my deficiencies. So tell us about the Apple Watch you had at the Genius Bar before there were Apple Watches.
Yes. You all remember the 6th gen iPad Nanos?
Yeah.
The little square ones? So back when they were cool, you could buy little wrist straps. I'd wear one in the store. And I think I, at some point, tried to get, I don't remember how they were formatted, but we tried to get them working as USB sticks or diagnostics.
Really, anyone out there that's worked in Apple repair remembers the old, was it AST diagnostics that we'd have
familiar.
on it? So, every Apple repair center would have a collection of USB drives, and the one you needed was always the one that somebody else was using, except for Nindi that had all them on his wrist.
Yes. It was also a nice icebreaker for when you've got you're restoring someone's phone and you've got 10 minutes to kill, you can start talking about, the flashy Apple Watch on your wrist, which is very convenient. Yeah.
So, aside from your work at the University of Melbourne and looking after the systems there, you still maintain your fascination as a developer, and so you've been working on a whole bunch of tools that the community has access to. So, do you want to tell us about some of the apps that you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go in order of, I guess, how I released them. So an app that I worked on a few years ago called Mac User Generator. It's a Swift GUI app that allows you to basically fill in a form, hit go, and you can spit out a Python package or a signed package. Sorry, let's try that again. Python script or a signed package, which you can use in automation to create user accounts. It was actually based off Per Olsen's Create User Package tool. I just wanted to take it, I wanted to, I guess, solve a problem that I was having at the time and take it to the next level, bake in High Sierra support, Mojave support, and the signing of the packages was important to our organization at the time. Next app I worked on was purely just to appease Marcus.
I'm seeing a pattern developing here.
Yeah, it's called Jamf Pro Switcher. So in our organization, we have multiple Jamf Pro instances, and it gets a little repetitive when you're trying to switch from one to the other when you want to use the same tools like Jamf Admin, Jamf Remote. So came up with a clever little tool where you can literally just toggle between the multiple instances that you have, and also made it a today widget. So if you flick from the side of your Mac, you can just 2 clicks and you're done, which comes in really handy. Another tool I've been working on more recently, called it Bombardier. It's a Mac utility that downloads and extracts bootcamp drivers with a single click. So again, in our organization, we've got about 800 student Macs that are dual boot. The Mac models vary. We've got machines from 2012 all the way up to the new Mac Minis. Downloading bootcamp drivers, automating the downloading of bootcamp drives is quite painful. So thought I'd solve this problem by, again, making a GUI tool. It lists all the available drivers, 1 click, and you're done. Off you go. Supports all Mac models, and the updates for the bootcamp drivers are actually external to the app. So every time Apple releases a new model, you don't need to update the app. You just hit refresh, and you can grab those bootcamp drives. Very handy. Yeah, those are the apps that I have released to the public.
And so you're mostly writing in Swift these days?
That's correct, yeah.
How was the transition for you from writing in Objective-C to writing in Swift?
Painless. Let's say painless. Objective-C, so I was learning Objective-C when, let's rewind, 7, 8 years. I was much younger, much more foolish. The tools that were available at the time weren't as mature as they are now. Especially when Swift came out, all the sort of documentation and tooling that came around that time made the transition very easy. Swift as a language is very, in comparison to Objective-C, it's a very easy language to pick up. And it was almost a case of I can just discard my knowledge of Objective-C and move straight to Swift. Yeah.
So you've made some other Swift apps as well that are not specifically around MacAdmin tools. So what are some of the other things you've worked on that have helped you sort of hone these skills?
Yeah, I can actually talk about a couple of things that I'm working on at the moment. I've got a Mac tool that I'm working on that will help MacAdmins troubleshoot config profiles. It's a tool that will allow you to sort of get a little more information about macOS, iOS, and tvOS config profiles. It's actually part of my presentation tomorrow, so I'll actually reveal what that does tomorrow, yeah. I do have another app that I am working on at the moment. I can't reveal what it is just yet, but I can give you a few little tidbits as to what I'm working on. It's sort of a bigger project that's going to hopefully assist the Mac community. In a nutshell, it's going to aggregate data from multiple sources. So think of your MDMs, your CRMs, your monitoring tools, your source control tools like Git, with the idea being it's going to project that information to TV screens, Apple TV, things like that. It's going to be in the form of a native Mac app, and the goal is to release it by the end of the year. So I guess watch this space. Yeah, continuously chipping away at little projects that I can get off the ground.
Our second sponsor today is Mac Stadium, a provider of Apple Mac infrastructure as a service. Whether you need a single Mac Mini or a fully scalable Mac private cloud, Mac Stadium can help you move your iOS and Mac app development out from under your desk and into the cloud. Mac Stadium has years of experience doing this with companies like Box, Shopify, Pandora, and many more, with over 3,000 customers worldwide. During WWDC this year, Mac Stadium officially announced Orca, that's spelled with a K, which is their latest cloud solution for Mac clouds. Orca stands for Orchestration with Kubernetes on Apple, and it's the only way to use native Kubernetes commands to create and orchestrate macOS VMs on genuine Apple hardware. Orca is in public beta now and will be released later this summer. If you're this winter, sorry, we're in Australia, this winter. If you're building apps for the Apple ecosystems, learn more about Orca and Mac Stadium's infrastructure at macstadium.com/MacAdmins. And as a special offer for MacAdmins listeners, Mac Stadium is offering 50% off your first month of a Mac Mini subscription with the promo code MacAdmins. Thanks very much to Mac Stadium for sponsoring this podcast.
So, Nindi, we've just had WWDC. The MacAdmins tend to get very excited about any new hardware, anything happening with the management framework. As a Swift developer, I'm guessing there were other areas of what was announced that you found interesting. Was there anything Apple sort of announced at WWDC from a Swift point of view or a developing point of view that you got excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually, I think, announced a month or so before WWDC, but I get excited about it, so we're going to talk about it. Application binary interface stability, or ABI stability. So right now, if you build a app in Swift and you export the app out of Xcode, you end up with an app bundle. It still ships with the Swift libraries baked into the app bundle. So you're looking at an extra 10, 11 megabytes of Swift runtime libraries. With ABI stability, we can get to a point where the operating system, and don't quote me on this, but I think Catalina is going to have this baked in. The Swift runtime libraries will actually be part of the operating system, so you can start building your apps, and they're much smaller in size. Smaller is always better, right? So I'm getting excited about that. the other feature that I'm excited about is Sidecar. So I'm always wanting more screen real estate, and I've been playing with the Apple frameworks that manage full screen apps. So I'm trying to get my head around what can I do with the screen real estate, what does that look like for an additional screen, in this case an iPad screen. So yeah, definitely excited about Sidecar and what that means for at least my apps.
Okay, so you're going to be presenting tomorrow here at XWorld your Swiss Army knife of admin tools. Without giving away everything in the presentation, what's the sort of idea behind your talk?
Yeah, so my talk title is MacSack, M-A-C-S-A-K. The S-A-K stands for Swiss Army Knife, with the idea being I'm going to demonstrate my top 10 tools, tips and tricks that every Mac admin can add to their toolkit. And I'll be showcasing that Swift tool that I've been working on as well.
Very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, there's always the day like right before when you get up to present and you're kind of like, this is going to be awesome and terrible all at the same time.
Absolutely.
But it's going to go well. Having presented is the best feeling.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so of course everyone here in the audience can see that Nindi isn't the only person we've got sitting here on the panel. We've got down the end we have Bart Reardon from CSIRO. So Bart, do you want to tell us about your role at CSIRO? What your title is?
Officially, I don't really have a title, so I get to make one up.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I've chosen the title. I've picked is desktop SOE tech lead for macOS and Linux.
And
like that.
SOE stands for?
SOE, Standard Operating Environment. I say SOE because that's the one everyone kind of mostly understands. Internally, we actually call it a BOE because we call it a base operating environment. We ship our machines out as a starting point for people to build whatever they need to do on top of, use as they see fit in the organisation. So,
tell us a little bit more about what CSIRO does.
We do all the science in Australia. Not all the science in Australia. We do lots of science in Australia.
A lot of
It's
science.
in the name. It's in the name.
What does CSIRO stand for?
So CSIRO, well, it stands for the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation. And we are the government scientific arm, I guess. So we're government funded. We are allowed to innovate and invent things and then sell those off to other places, which is a bit unusual for a government department to be able to do, but it helps with bringing money in.
So I know you've been at the CSIRO for a while, but do you want to tell us your origin story? What got you into managing Macs and being at CSIRO?
Yeah, well, CSIRO, I started as just a standard, level 2 desktop support, Windows guy, that sort of very, very standard, help the people and make sure that their stuff still works. And along the way, due to the nature of our work, a lot of people are allowed to get the hardware that they want in order to do the work that they need to do. So we would always have, odd, Macs and sort of white box desktops and all that sort of stuff floating around. So while I'd be working around, I'd be I don't want to kind of say it, but like dumpster diving old machines that people were sort of throwing out or getting rid of, and every so often there'd be like a G4 Power Mac or in some cases even an old beige Mac or something like that. So I'd pull those out and I'd see what I could get working, and then sort of slowly started sort of thinking, can I get this working more in our environment, and sort of got the reputation of being now the Mac guy. So I was now like level 2 support for people who had Macs, and I was helping them out. And then we had a couple of restructures around the place, and I ended up getting a role in our core desktops team, designing an official Mac-supported SOE that CSIRO would officially support, or our IT department would officially support.
So what sort of iteration of the Mac environment was that when you sort of took on that responsibility?
Basically, essentially going from if you want a Mac, you go to the store and you buy it and you support yourself, to very sort of minimal steps. I think is what we took. So it just started with making sure that our inventory tool was on there, and then and that was the minimum, and then we would gradually build on that. So now we will support hooking up mail to Exchange, making sure you had Office license for your machine, and then making sure that considerations were made for if we're bringing in new services, that they were also supportable on the Mac. So printing services and all that sort of stuff, and making sure that people could use their Mac as much as possible as a Mac without having to resort to either virtual machines or remoting into another PC to be able to do essential work. So
Which version of the OS was this when CSIRO sort of introduced this approach?
I came into the team, 10.6 was the OS of the day, and our setup was started with a Linux-based NetBoot server, so I was doing fat imaging and all that sort of stuff, and that has now changed quite significantly.
Has it?
Oh, a little bit, a little bit. So actually, funny. So we had. I was building these images on 10.6, and then 10.7 came out, and 10.7 introduced the idea of the recovery partition, and because we were using Linux as our NetBoot server, the DHCP options needed in order to make that work changed slightly. And back then, I had no idea what had changed or why it had changed and how to get this thing working. And so I was thinking, how am I going to roll these machines out to people? This is going to be a big pain. And at the time, in order to build my images, I had this folder of scripts, and I would essentially put everything I wanted in a standard location, and then I would run these scripts, and it would build the image for me. And I thought, I could just package up those scripts and then give that to the people who were rolling out the machines, and they could run those and it would build it. So I started doing that. So 10.7 was actually when we moved to thin imaging. And I would like to say that I had the forethought and insight to know what Apple was going to do in the future, but unfortunately I think I stumbled into that one.
CSIRO innovating yet again.
Yet again. They stole it from us.
Accidental innovation
Exactly.
is certainly important.
Absolutely.
So, CSIRO has one of the interesting Wi-Fi patents that's part of that process. What other kind of cool technologies has CSIRO been part of?
Yeah, so as Marcus showed us a little bit earlier, we have polymer banknotes. So many countries around the world, some are represented here, some aren't, are using polymer banknotes now, and that was an invention from CSIRO back in the 80s.
Oh.
So our first one was, the first released one was the bicentennial 1988 $10 note, and that was a trial one that was put out to see how well it went, and went pretty well. So we've converted all our currency over, and I think Canada and the UK, and there's like a whole boatload of other countries now that are using those notes.
We use all kinds of creepy paper instead in the States. But it was funny. I was going through my office before coming out here, and I found a bunch of stuff. I found a box that had been sent by my folks because they were like, "Look, we found a bunch of your stuff, so we're just going to post that to you, and it's your problem now." And going through that, I actually found a $5 Australian note from when I was here in the 90s, and it still looks pristine. It still looks lovely. I, of course, completely forgot to bring it with me. That would have been an excellent way to buy a beer at some point. I don't know if they're still legal tender at this point. I don't know how the notes expire, but I mean, it still looks in great shape, which is more than I could say for a bunch of the paper currency we have.
Still worth $5.
Excellent.
So apart from that, we've done, I've got a little list of stuff. So we've got a website that actually has a list of all our innovations that we do, and I've just sort of picked out a few. So the other one that was interesting was a Hendra virus vaccine, which is a horse virus.
Wow.
So we got that one. On the other side of that, we invented myxomatosis virus to kill rabbits. So
Whoops.
Horses good, rabbits bad.
we giveth, we taketh away. Extended wear contact lenses, AeroGuard if anyone doesn't like flies and stuff.
Only Australia would need that.
Exactly.
We need what? I'm sorry, I missed what it was.
AeroGuard?
AeroGuard.
AeroGuard? What?
What do you call that? It's just spray you put on so you don't get bitten by mozzies or flies.
Right. Insect repellent.
Insect
Yeah.
repellent.
Got it.
There's an interesting thing called gene shears. So obviously there's a lot of gene modification and stuff going on. So there's an actual molecule that was designed which will shear through RNA molecules. So that's an interesting thing that was invented.
I'm sure that will have no unintended consequences.
No. Softly wool wash liquid. So, yeah, I didn't know about that one either. And other than that, we have a lot of interaction with NASA and JPL, and so we've got some very nice radio astronomers here in Sydney. And they do things like, build, receivers and whatnot for, we've got the Australian Square Kilometre Array out at Narrabri. So they're doing that sort of stuff, and yeah. We're sort of all over, very wide spectrum of things that we do. So.
Yeah, there's a huge retrospective on the CSIRO website about Apollo 11, because it's obviously the 50th anniversary, and you guys were heavily involved in the transmission station that's down here.
Yeah, so our telescope at Parkes had a decent role in helping get the footage of Neil jumping around the moon to viewers around the world. So.
Very, very cool.
So, speaking about innovation and moving forward, you've recently integrated MDM to your Mac fleet at CSIRO. So, what's that process been like?
It's a very steady as she goes kind of process. I didn't want to disrupt people as much as possible. So the idea was that initially it would be just a natural attrition thing, that we would just put new machines as they came in onto MDM. And this was kind of we're kind of forced to because due to Apple. So we thought, we'll start with those new machines. So all new machines since January have had Jamf, been Jamf enrolled. And for existing machines, it was a very interesting process. So we have a kind of a mix of OSs still. We do still have a few people on 10.11, 10.12. Not that many, but they were a lot easier to deal with because you can just roll out the Jamf enroll package and no one gets nagged about anything and no one gets any notifications, and then they're just on the MDM, which is, in a way, it's kind of great, but in the other way, you kind of understand why Apple prompting people to do stuff now, because it's kind of I know they're our machines that we're doing it to, but and then to deal with the other ones for 10.13, 10.14, I didn't want to just blast out an email saying this is going to happen, you're going to see some dialogues, just click OK. I don't want to train the Mac users to blindly click just because someone has told them to. So instead, what we did was utilised a tool called UMAD. It's a Universal MDM something. I can't remember what it is. I'll look it up later. Anyway, UMAD. So Eric Gomez is now maintaining that. And it's a nice little thing. It gives you a nice little pop-up GUI for what would normally be a DEP nag command. And so an email went out to people that they probably read it, or maybe they didn't. But the great thing was it popped up this dialogue, and I could have a bit of text on there, and they could see it, and I would give them 30 days to accept it. They could dismiss it if they didn't want to do it right now, and when they accepted, they would just go up and click the notification and say accept, and then that was it, and it was done. And it was very upfront and very transparent to the user what was happening. And we've sort of gone through the process of rolling out to a number of initial sites with that, and then we've only just completed rolling out to the remainder of all our machines. So overall, it's kind of gone well. There were a couple of little hiccups on the way, but yeah, so far it's done all right. I wrote a blog post about one of the issues that I had and reported it through to Jamf, and it's a very interesting kind of issue, but
Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So the issue is that and it's kind of Apple's documentation says one thing, and then Jamf is doing something else, and they are doing the right thing. Because what it is when you set up a new machine and you connect it to iCloud, it creates a little keychain, and the keychain has a certificate in it, so it can do the safe communication to Apple. And Apple does not maintain that certificate once the machine has been deployed. So it'll keep that certificate. It expires in 12 months after you roll it out. So if the machine has been out for 12 months or older, this certificate will be expired, but Apple still use it. And their documentation actually says ignore the expiry when using this. And where it comes into the DP enrollment is when you push out, or when you do a DP nag to send the notification to enroll the machine, it will pop up the little dialogue, and you click OK to that, and it'll do some APNS stuff. And then the command gets sent off to Jamf, and you'll get an error in there saying the certificate's expired, we're not going to let you do that. And it doesn't send the response back. And then all the user sees is the 403 error. So debugging that was quite interesting. And in one sense, it's kind of like, the MDM vendors need to sort of go by Apple's documentation, what they say, but by the same token, you're telling the vendors to explicitly trust a certificate that's expired. So I can kind of see both sides there, but.
So you've been looking after the Macs at CSIRO for a long time at this point. 10.6 goes a long way back, and while some people think it's the good old days, what sort of mindset changes have you been, required to roll with, in terms of rolling with the punches as OS 10 evolved into Mac OS and then beyond?
From an admin perspective, it's just the main thing that we've had to deal with is the fact that when Apple have moved to this annual process, and when they roll out their OS, they essentially stop supporting the previous one. And so it's no longer a case of saying, this is our desktop image, this is the one you'll use. When Apple release a new OS, you will get it when we're ready for you to get it. I mean, that has all ended. It's now, the OS comes out and it's free, and everyone just wants to download it in the App Store. So from day one, when the OS is released, we have to be able to support it. So we can't just wait for it and then sort of release it when we're ready. So it's gone from a sort of a safe space of not letting the users do what they want to do, and then to a more user-centric environment where we sort of have to anticipate that the users are going to do what they want to do, and support that as best as we can. Fortunately, in CSIRO, we're very flexible with that. So being able to adjust our workflows to take that into account has sort of been a blessing. So, unfortunately, we haven't been able to, had to well, there hasn't been any friction on that anyway. So, which has been really good. The other thing is the acceptance that macOS as a platform is one that can be used for pretty much everyday business purpose, and for a vast majority of scientific research purposes. So there's much more acceptance now that it's a platform and we support it, and sort of getting that out there and making sure that people are aware what's going on has been another thing that's changed. We've moved away from the we are a Windows shop and we are a Dell shop, to we are that, but we're also a Mac shop, and we're also you want this other piece of hardware, you can have that as well. And so being flexible like that, it's been a big change over the last few years.
So it's interesting to note that both you and Nindi, your organisations, have Linux as well as Mac OS in your job titles. So do you see many similarities between managing Mac and Linux endpoints these days? I know that it used to be kind of the same, but now that we live in a SIP-influenced world, Is it still making sense to be responsible for both of those with the clear directions that Apple are heading in?
From my side, they've definitely drifted apart in the ways that they're managed. I mean, we still manage Linux devices, but there's much greater range in choice that the users want to use, so that they might not like the distro that we give them. So they might want to use something else, and we sort of have to have some pushback on that. But just in terms of managing them, the Linux devices now, like, you sort of look at the changes Apple's made in security, and then you deal with that, and you come to terms with that, and then you go and do your management on Linux, and it's just like, oh my God, I can do anything on this machine.
And it's not just you that can do anything on this machine.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of roles. There's a lot of similarities, but by the same token, there's quite a wide gap in sort of the security management side of it. Not to mention that a lot of the Linux distros that are user-friendly aren't necessarily enterprise-friendly in terms of configuring and setup and that sort of thing. So.
Mm-hmm. The MacAdmins Podcast is brought to you by CMD Reporter. Ever feel like Windows admins get all the new toys? Wish there was a Sysmon equivalent for Macs that actually works? Well, CMD Reporter delivers the macOS logs and audit data you need to the SIEM agent or monitoring console you already use, completely configured with configuration profiles. See how government and enterprise Mac teams are hunting threats in real time, all without a kernel extension, at cmdreporter.com. Or keep the conversations going on the MacAdmins Slack at CMD Reporter channel. CMD Reporter, capture what matters.
So we've just had WWDC. Nindi, you spoke a little bit about some of the Swift changes. So do either of you have anything you want to rant about post-WWDC or anything interesting that you've seen? Nindi?
I'll accept a rave as well. If we want to rant, you can
Oh.
also rave, so
exactly.
go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more rave than rant. I'm just excited to get stuck into all the new framework stuff that's come out. It's just a matter of finding time. There's all the app kit stuff, all the UI kit stuff, Swift UI, which was announced at WWDC. Excited to get my teeth into that. It's just finding the time right now.
What about things more specific to sort of managing the Mac fleet or OS? Was there anything sort of Apple's sort of leanings towards that you found might be interesting for your organisation?
Yes, actually, Marcus. Notarizing apps. So we do make some in-house apps at our organisation, and just understanding what does notarizing mean. Definitely getting our head around what we can do, what we can't do. Do we have to repurpose the app so it does work with the next operating system? All those sort of questions is what we're sort of working through now.
Yeah. How about your environment at CSIRO, Bart? Is there anything that you're looking forward to being able to implement or changing the way you do things?
I mean, I'm really interested in the direction they're going with the separate data petition now. When they announced APFS, that was one of my sort of like, wow, I can do this great thing where you can quote petition but use the whole disk, and then so you'll have data on separate petitions, but they'll just look like it's on the same disk. So it looks like the direction they're going there. It's going to be very interesting for being able to either reinstall an OS, maintaining the user's data, or like where they're going to go with that. It's very, very interesting.
I felt like it was a huge step forward towards the dream of erase all settings for the Mac and take it back to a setup assistant kind of environment. It was just blow away the user partition and off you go again.
So the minor little nag that I've got just playing with the beta is a concern around dialogue fatigue. Some of the tools and stuff that we use, and this is not this app's not notarized or it's not signed or anything like that. This is just I just want to launch this app for the first time, and you get 5 or 6 dialogues popping up and saying, oh, we want to access the microphone, we want to access the camera, I get that. Or we want to access your downloads folder, we want to access your desktop, we want to access, and it's just, I just want to use the damn app, just go away. So there's going to be an interesting balance between deploying apps and which dialogues do we suppress and which ones do we allow. So I don't want users to be over-serviced, as Pete's mentioned in his talk. But by the same token, I don't want the users just to blindly click any dialogue that pops up because they're used to it.
The possibility of rolling out these kind of things through TCC profiles, though, is certainly something that we can be aggressive about it as we explore all of this and just be like, look, for the things that we actually care about and for the apps that we want to install by default, we can deliver a panoply of profiles to essentially say, hey, look, these are okay. And then talk a little bit more about the user to avoid the over-servicing issue where the user is suddenly helpless because they don't know what they're seeing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a difficult balance, and striking it's going to be more art than science for a while.
Yeah. Overall, I was super impressed with this year, though. There's a lot of great stuff in there, so I can't wait to get my teeth stuck into it. So
if folks out there in the audience think this is probably the best WDC we've seen in quite a while, yeah, lots of nodding out there for those of you not in the room, but definitely some huge changes coming to the platform.
And it's also really good to see a lot more transparency about what's changing and a lot more communication about the details of these changes. So, we're looking, as we always are, we're looking forward to seeing more of that detail and seeing how this evolves. So, it's really interesting, and it's been really interesting to see how things are changing and the possibilities we're going to get with these new versions of the OS.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go back to XWorld. So how have you both found the conference so far? So Nindi, this is your first XWorld.
Yes, first XWorld, first time presenting. I think I like inflicting pain on myself, as do we all. It's been great. The workshops have been great, learning a lot from the people that have presented so far. I'm presenting tomorrow afternoon, so I think I'll feel a little more at ease once my presentation's done. When we flew up, the weather in Melbourne was, I think the morning was 0 degrees Celsius, so I'm enjoying the slightly warmer weather.
I was going to say Sydney's been a beautiful host aside from the rain, but I will say it is the middle of winter here.
So Bart, you're an XWorld veteran, I guess, so how are you finding this year?
Maybe. Very good, yeah, it's great. It's great meeting up with all the people I know and new faces and inviting other people here. But it's third year here, third year presenting, which I hate doing, so I don't know why I keep signing up for it. But
especially when your presentation slot this year is...
I've got the hangover slot tomorrow.
Yeah, first off after the conference dinner. So what are you presenting tomorrow?
So my brief was demystifying LaunchD. But it'll be interesting to see if I actually end up demystifying and if I just end up confusing people. But we'll see how that pans out.
And Tom, how have you found XWorld?
XWorld's been great. I mean, aside from my personal jet lag and all of the the related issues related to flying all the way around the world, but it's been absolutely wonderful. And to get to meet everybody, we had a really great workshop yesterday. We had a tremendous crowd in the audience. Chris is sitting down here; he's nodding. But we had a really attentive crowd. We got to talk a lot about the different kind of things that we're doing with Wi-Fi these days. And today's sessions have just been top shelf. Talking with Daniel about certificates for several hours this morning, managed to not explode my brain, which is unusual when certificates are involved. So no, it's been a really great first 2 days so far, and we've got a day to go. Lots of fun stuff left on the agenda, and I was going to say for everybody listening out there, get down to Sydney, come back for next year, and it's definitely worth your time.
The animals aren't as scary as everybody suggests.
No one has tried to kill me. No creature has tried to kill me since I arrived. I'm only on day 4, so.
And that's maybe not necessarily true, which probably brings us to our bonus question. So
before we get to the bonus
Okay.
question, I do want to say thanks to our friends from Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring this community calendar. First up, we've got some wonderful conferences coming up. Not just the last day of X-World, which is tomorrow, but the MacAdmins conference at Penn State University is the 9th through 12th of July. Mac Sysadmin is in Gothenburg, Sweden, the first week of October. The Mac Tech Conference is in Los Angeles, the 15th through 18th of October. And the Jamf Nation User Conference is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the 12th through 14th of November. Who thought November in Minnesota was a good idea? I'm not 100% sure I understand that one. Of course, we got meetups on the calendar from the Apple admins of the Carolinas in Charlotte, North Carolina at Barista Craft Coffee on the 1st of July. The Houston Apple admins will meet at the St. Arnold Beer Garden on the 17th of July, and the Apple admins of Seattle and the Great Northwest will meet at Fred Hutch on 18th of July. If you'd like to leave a meetup announcement, we're more than happy to read it out here on the podcast. You can go to our repository at github.com/MacAdminspodcast/comcal, and you can submit a pull request. It's a really low-stakes process. We've helped many, many people learn how to do pull requests by submitting events to the MacAdmins community calendar. So please take this opportunity. If you've started a meetup group or even know of one that's just happening in your area, please send those in. That's how we find out about them. And submitting a pull request is good practice for all of the software engineers out there. I'm pointing at Tony Williams, who gave a great session this afternoon thinking about software engineering for the MacAdmins folks that are out there. So thanks very much to Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring this community calendar. So the bonus question. I have a question about the bin chickens. There's a lot of laughter here. So I'd been told in the past about the bin chickens, and I found the idea just unbelievable. There's a type of bird here in Sydney. They're the white ibis. They have long, hooked, curved bills. They're about the size of a small pelican for the Americans out there. They're a medium-sized bird. This is not like a pigeon or a seagull. This is a fairly decent-sized bird. So I have the question, which is, the noble bin chicken, is this the MacAdmins' new mascot, or is it just the scourge of the planet? And I'll open the floor.
Nindi.
I'm all for it. Yeah, it just sounds awesome. Noble bin chicken. Yeah. Ship it. Yeah.
Yep. Bart.
We don't have them down where we are in Canberra. So.
Really?
No,
So it's a Sydney thing only?
You have politicians
We
instead.
have politicians instead.
They're less noble, I hear.
They're not as noble as a bin chicken.
They're still digging through your trash. Look, I can say the noble bin chicken, MacAdmin's new mascot, or scourge of the planet. Why not both? I think there's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. So, the thing I like about the bin chicken is from a distance you go, oh, it's a white ibis. Look at this. It's got what can be best described as some kind of scimitar or saber on the end of its head, and it's like, oh, isn't that cute? And we see lots of tourists going, oh, look at these cute birds, and they start to get close, and when you look at their face up close,
They're grizzled.
Evil.
Yes.
They're evil. They look like they died some time ago, and they want they want your lunch, or they want what was your lunch. And
we went for a walk today at lunchtime and ended up at a park just south of here. And there was a large group of school children having their lunch, and the bin chickens were out, and they were aggressive. They were stalking these poor children, and I wasn't sure if they were after the kids themselves or the lunches. And I mean, I'm sure it was the lunches, but like there are a couple of those smaller kids where the bin chicken was probably a little bit bigger than them.
Yeah.
And they're definitely getting aggressive, and it was definitely a thing to behold.
the thing that I've tried to work out with the bin chicken was it a case that there was this white ibis, this bird with a long beak that discovered it could take food from humans, or was it that it was some kind of other bird that then evolved this long, dangerous beak so that it could take the food from humans? I'm sure maybe the CSIRO can do some kind of study on that. Did the CSIRO in fact develop the bin chicken with some of your genetic modification.
Well, I don't know.
Not going to put that on the website, are you? No one's going to take responsibility for that.
We'll just keep that one under.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep that one hidden. That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. But should we wrap, or
I
is there
think-
anything
I
else? Any other news that we need to discuss?
I don't think it gets much better than the bin chicken.
Fair
so,
enough.
Yeah, I think we're kind of ready to go. So do you want to...
I'll thank very much to Nindi, Gill, and to Bart, Reardon. It's been a pleasure to have you both. And folks can find you on the internet where? If they want to go find... Nindi, I know you have a GitHub URL.
Yeah, github.com/Ninksoft. That's NINXSOFT. And that's the same on Slack.
Wonderful. And Bart?
I'm at Bart Reardon on Slack and on Twitter and on Instagram and on GitHub somewhere.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us up here today. It was a real pleasure to have you. Thanks, of course, to our Patreon backers, Randy Wong, Weldon Dodd, Justin Holt, Chad Swarthout, William Smith, Stephen Weinstein, Jason Detbarn, Seb Nash, and FTIF. Thanks very much to the sponsors of this podcast and the VMware folks. The VMware folks, specifically Workspace ONE, Mac Stadium's Orca product, and CMD Reporter. And thanks, of course, to our friends at Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring the community calendar. And if you want to do us a huge favor, everybody out there, grab your podcast client of choice and leave us a review out at Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or any place else that you can find quality podcasts, or ours. But thanks very much for the nice folks at XWorld for hosting us here this year. Tony, thank you so very much, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.